The method was started about 9 years ago by two roommates in San Francisco, one who had a design and branding background and the other who was an environmental scientist who was working in climate policy, which involves a whole bunch of very static spreadsheets that attempt to affect change over long periods of time by informing policy to better track, in this case, climate change and greenhouse gases. Not a very quick path to action. So it was this impatience and this insight that starting a business was an opportunity to create the change that they wanted, from which Method was born. So the two roommates, Adam Lowry was the environmental scientist, and Eric Ryan being the design and branding background, the advertising guy described as the one who wears the white shoes, created Method after walking down the supermarket aisles and seeing that this was the one area of product in the home that really hadn't been reinvented, that nobody had took a close look at from what they could see for about the last 50 years or so. We have the Cradle to Cradle certification is again working with Dr. Braungart. In the Cradle to Cradle certification, there'll be a complete audit of how the product is made. So from how the packaging is designed, where the ingredients are coming from, how much is known about all of them, what will be done downstream. We think of we think of the environmental attributes of the product relating to the past and the present and the future. So where do they come from? How are they produced? How are they when you're using them? And what do they do after you're done with them? So making sure that there aren't consequences of their use either before or after you're looking at them. So the Cradle to Cradle certification looks at any product across those three, make sure that they're not only not creating a burden on the environment or actually delivering benefit, so that they're non-toxic materials that are biodegrading in the environment, that the packaging is made from recycled material and it can be recyclable again downstream. This has been the most holistic of all the certification programs we've seen. We've had, I guess, about 20 products so far certified in it. And there's some other ones, but there as many green products as there are nearly as many green certifications. So it's tricky to choose which ones. I think a lot of them say some very specific things about product, but what we like about Cradle to Cradle is it's largely the most holistic for product design. For us, one of the biggest triggers is we see sustainability as an opportunity for innovation. So this is one of the cues that gets all of our product developers scratching their heads and thinking, okay, well, how would I make this differently? How would I make a better product? And what ingredient would go in here? How would I reimagine how a toilet bowl is cleaned? Mundane as that sounds, this is one of the triggers to get people to think of product formats differently. So instead of accepting the status quo of how products have been developed for the last generation, there's this new pressure of saying, okay, well, it has to be good for the environment and safe for people. All right, that restricts my palate. Now I'll try to figure out where it comes from. So creates differentiation in the product offering, means that your product will now look, it'll have a pressure to make it look different than anything in the mass market. I think that the hidden benefit probably is generating a cushion from coming environmental pressures. So if we do see an escalation of oil prices again, if you figured out a way to use less energy in the production of your products, may not be that relevant yet, but in 5 years, if there's a $100 barrel or $150 barrel of oil, and $50 a ton to emit carbon, then all the companies that have spent that time thinking about how to develop their products in a low carbon way have a cushion to versus all of the companies that now have these energy pressures again. You can't change what you can't measure. So first of all, seeing what your outputs are, seeing sources of waste, for us, product was the easiest one to look at because it is the biggest output of material into the broader world. So we can look at those, see what they're made out of, what we do know and what we don't know, track down those sources of lack of information, and see what innovations exist in either the product design, the materials being used in them, the ingredients, and how they're being manufactured. That's kind of the material part is the first one. The second one is creating opportunities for employees who are experts in each of their domains to see this now from an environmental lens. So for example, our operations group has been tasked with seeing, all right, well, where in your distribution, where in shipping and moving product around and finding modes of transport, where could that be done greener? So what we set up is that the greenskeeping group at Method is basically a task force that effectively consults the other groups inside Method. We're not going to be the experts on distribution. We're not going to be the experts on on brand communications. But what we can do is when they need information to figure out how to do their jobs in a greener way, we can be the information that feeds into their efforts. So it's recognizing the domain experts and helping them understand what is a greener solution in their area, and engaging them to go and look for those. The biggest challenge has been from the suppliers of these ingredients. There's not this culture of transparency yet. So we'll ask questions about where the natural oil came from to make a soap ingredient from. And a lot of the time they're very hesitant to divulge exactly what their sources are and where they're buying them from, and what preservatives might be in them or what other additives might be. That's been the biggest challenge. We've developed some great relationships with some great suppliers who have seen this this newer culture of communicating more about the ingredients and revealing more about how they're making their products. Those have been the biggest wins so far, is showing them that that we're not necessarily interested in breaching their confidentiality. It's just a process of making more visible why these ingredients are really good. I think it's very appropriate to announce that we've gotten 30% of the way, as far as we can tell, that these are the efforts we're making. I think seeing humility in these, humility and transparency, and making clear where the big wins are and where the big challenges are, I think that's very credible, and I think that's it's certainly served us well to make it understood that we've arrived at, for example, this 100% recycled plastic bottle, but we can't find a recycled plastic pump yet. Those don't exist on the market. We're looking for those, so it's not a perfect solution. It's progress, not perfection. We've seen in the last few years really a ramping up of the number of companies that specifically address environmental problems. And we've also seen the larger companies in very staid categories starting to address them. What's been very interesting for me is seeing how many of our very traditional competitors have responded and understood that green cleaning products actually are a massive opportunity for growth. So this will happen not only in cleaning products, but also imagine in footwear and in apparel, in automobile manufacture, and really any sector, the product and service delivery, the industrial economy. This is now understood that environmental problems, they're not a limited time pressure. It's not a fad that can pass, that people will have their limited attention span and the problems will go away. These are very clear and long-term problems that luckily there are very good examples of them being addressed successfully. And the thinking has evolved to the point that this is not only risk mitigation and defensive strategy, but an opportunity to make better product, to engage consumers, to have people understand what they're buying and why, and understand what their impacts are on the environment and what they can do to better those. Fairtrade hasn't really delved into our product categories yet. So, for example, we're sourcing coconut oil frequently to make the soaps out of. Is not a lot of Fairtrade produced coconut oil. I think the ethics of production are extremely important and often very tightly linked to the environmental implications. The Fairtrade world has advanced very quickly in a couple key areas, in chocolate and coffee bean production, which is great. The quality of life for the workers involved in these is also very important. So some harmonization I think is important, but I think there are different aspects of the same question, which is this process of producing goods generating benefit, or is it just generating a burden? Fairtrade and environmental attention are now saying, okay, well, there is a way to harmonize the production of these goods and deliver the benefit that they should.